Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really going to pull back the curtain on something causing major headwinds right now. We're talking about the ripple effects of high tariffs and just general economic uncertainty, especially for, the backbone of the economy, small businesses.
It's definitely a landscape that's become, well, significantly more challenging. I mean, the data shows tariffs are sitting at levels we haven't seen since, 1933?
Wow.
That's not just some abstract statistic. It translates into very real pressure on the ground for these businesses.
Absolutely. And our guide for this deep dive is a report from the Revenue Review. It's based on a pretty recent survey they did of small business owners.
Okay.
It's called Tariffs, Tension, and Tactical Moves, which honestly sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, that title kind of nails it, doesn't it? So our mission here is to unpack what this report found, really understand the challenges small businesses are facing because of all this volatility.
Right.
And crucially, zero in on the practical strategies it suggests for, navigating this tricky environment.
Okay, so let's dive into the numbers the Revenue Review gathered. They surveyed over 40 of their users, actual small business owners, back in mid-April 2025. And some of the data points really jump out.
They really do. They paint a pretty clear picture of the impact. A significant number, 63%, said they've already had to make operational changes specifically because of tariff pressures.
Think about that. Nearly 2/3 already changing how they operate day to day. And, well, it gets tougher. 65% have been forced to pass some or even all of those increased costs onto their customers.
Which is always such a difficult decision, right? It affects their competitiveness, their customer relationships. It's tough. And the future outlook, it's dominated by concern. A huge 86% are worried about future tariffs or other trade disruptions.
86%. That is an overwhelming level of anxiety about what might be coming next. I mean, these numbers aren't just abstract percentages floating around.
No, not at all.
They represent real business owners making really hard decisions about their livelihoods, their employees.
And that's exactly why the stories shared in the report are so powerful. They really connect those numbers to actual experiences on the ground.
Right. Let's maybe look at a couple of examples the report shared. There's an e-commerce business owner, I think down in Arizona. They described facing some, pretty standard negative impacts at first. Things like, unfortunately, having to lay off staff, reduce employee hours, and really tighten up their purchasing. Just cutting back.
Pretty typical responses, unfortunately. But what's fascinating in their story is this kind of unexpected silver lining the report mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, the softening U.S. dollar actually led to an increase in their international orders. So that influx helped offset some of the pain they were feeling domestically.
That's interesting.
It really shows how these big global shifts can have complex, sometimes surprising sort of dual effects,
That's a great point. You really do have to look at the whole picture sometime.
Right.
Then there's the retail shop owner in Texas. Now, for them, tariffs weren't the main headache.
Right, because most of their suppliers are located in the U.S. or Canada.
Exactly. So their direct supply chain wasn't really hit by those big tariff changes we saw.
Correct. The report highlighted that for this retailer, the biggest factor impacting their business was actually consumer confidence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when there's widespread uncertainty humming in the background, due to trade policy or whatever else, people just tend to tighten their belts. And that hits retail spending, doesn't matter where the goods originally came from.
Makes sense.
Oh.
And then there's a really striking example, this one from a construction company in Colorado. They shared a very direct, measurable loss.
Yeah, that one stood out. They reported losing over $100,000 in revenue, specifically from jobs that were canceled or put on hold because of tariff-related uncertainty.
Wow, just the uncertainty itself.
Exactly. It wasn't necessarily that their material prices, like lumber or steel, had already shot up massively yet, but the sheer instability and worry about it caused clients to just halt projects.
A six-figure loss, driven purely by that ripple effect, that policy uncertainty hitting customer confidence. It's amazing. These stories really underscore how far-reaching the impact can be, don't they?
They really do.
Your business doesn't have to be importing massive containers to feel the heat. It can show up in your vendor costs, or just in customer hesitancy, or, like that, projects getting paused indefinitely.
So, yeah, the challenges are definitely significant, but the report, thankfully, transitions from just highlighting the problems to actually exploring potential ways businesses can navigate through them.
Which is exactly what small business owners need right now.
Right.
Some practical advice. This pressure, as tough as it is, could also be a catalyst for change. The report sort of frames it as an opportunity, maybe, for businesses to become more adaptable.
Build resilience, get smarter about their financial footing, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the report lays out 3 pretty practical steps businesses are taking or, can take right now.
Okay, let's dig into that first one. Evaluating expenses. But the key is doing it smartly. Cutting costs is often the first instinct, right, when times get tight?
Always.
But the report warns against a specific trap here.
Yes. The critical mistake they point out is slashing your sales and marketing budgets across the board. I mean, while it offers immediate savings, the report emphasizes that this often starves the business of future growth precisely when you need to be fighting for every single sale.
That makes so much sense. It's like
Cutting off your oxygen supply just when you need to be running the hardest.
Yeah, exactly. You need to keep that revenue engine running. So the alternative strategy they suggest involves considering short-term funding options.
Exactly. The idea presented is using flexible capital to maintain those essential functions, keeping your marketing efforts going, maybe retaining your key staff, ensuring your operational quality doesn't slip.
Right.
It's not just about surviving the immediate tough spot. It's about positioning the business so it's ready for a stronger rebound when things stabilize.
Okay, that's smart. So moving on to step 2 from the report. Building a cash flow safety net. And this isn't just about like a tiny emergency fund.
No.
It sounds like they mean creating a real cushion for potentially ongoing uncertainty.
It acknowledges that this volatility might not just be a short blip, it could stick around. And the data really backs this up. The report found that 70% of the business owners they surveyed have either already sought or are currently considering additional financing specifically because of these tariff pressures.
70%. That number really highlights the widespread need to, proactively shore up cash flow.
It really does.
The report stresses that getting ahead of a potential cash crunch gives you that crucial breathing room before things become absolutely critical.
And they point to specific types of capital that can be particularly helpful in this situation. Things like revenue-based financing, where repayment is tied directly to your sales performance, which offers flexibility.
Yeah.
And also a business line of credit, which is basically just a flexible pool of funds you can draw on as you need it. The report frames these as ways to support operations and manage cash flow without necessarily requiring you to give up equity or control of your business.
But that clarity on the types of funding is really helpful for people listening. All right, the third practical step, building a more resilient supplier network. Because tariffs can definitely send material prices spiraling, right? So staying ahead of that curve is key.
Absolutely vital. And the tactic suggested is quite actionable, actually. It's about identifying, say, 2 or 3 key items, materials, products, whatever, where you're seeing price volatility or you're just concerned about supply disruptions due to tariffs or other factors. Then actively scout out at least one alternative supplier for each of those critical items.
So you're not completely reliant on just one vendor if their prices suddenly spike or their supply chain gets disrupted.
Exactly. It gives you leverage. It gives you flexibility. Just as the report notes, you have options.
Right.
And the report adds a couple of other related strategies for easing cash flow that are linked to suppliers. One is exploring if you can request extended payment terms from your own vendors.
Yeah, pushing out when you have to pay can make a huge difference for cash flow management, can it?
Makes a massive difference. And then there's the other side of the coin. For larger contracts or orders you receive, asking for deposits from your customers upfront. Both of these tactics help ease that squeeze on your working capital and, importantly, reduce dependency points in your supply chain. You're less reliant on any single vendor or payment cycle.
Okay. So wrapping up this deep dive into the Revenue Review report, the core message seems pretty clear. Yes, high tariffs, economic uncertainty. They're creating significant difficulties for small businesses. No doubt about it.
They are definitely presenting real challenges that demand action. But the report also makes, I think, a compelling case that this pressure is actually forcing businesses to become leaner, maybe faster, and ultimately more resilient in the long run.
Right. It's a trial by fire, in a way. The report concludes by emphasizing how important it is to find resources to navigate this landscape with, some confidence. They do mention their own specific flexible funding options, which they say are designed for businesses facing exactly these kinds of issues, noting that approval can often be pretty quick.
Which, as the report presents it, is one of the tools businesses are using or certainly looking into, especially to implement the strategies we just talked about, like strengthening that cash flow safety net we mentioned.
Yeah, it's really about understanding the tools and the strategies available when you're faced with these kinds of external pressures. Now, thinking maybe a bit beyond the specific practical steps outlined in this report, and considering that ongoing uncertainty it highlights, here's something maybe for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay.
How might small businesses proactively build business models that are inherently less sensitive or exposed to global trade volatility in the first place, looking longer term?
That's a really critical question, isn't it? For any business looking to build truly sustainable resilience in the world we live in today.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.